Hello and welcome to the ReCommerce Podcast, the podcast where we talk all things re-commerce and circular businesses. This week, like every other week so far, I'm joined by Tuomo, the CEO and co-founder of Twice Commerce. Welcome.
Thank you again.
This week we are diving deep into the world of aggregators, and we want to talk about why there are no aggregators for equipment rental businesses. So I think everybody is quite familiar with a lot of that are controlling and owning the demand on their specific fields. A couple examples are, for example, Uber for car rides and Airbnb for short-term rentals. But is this actually the case that there are no aggregators, or are there just not any successful ones? So, Tuomo, are there any rental aggregators in the space?
Yeah, so if we look into equipment rentals, there are, of course, aggregators. I think in most product categories, there always is some aggregator. I think the question is then that, is there a dominant player that would dominate across national borders, or would be kind of operating both in North America and Europe and kind of running equipment rentals? So there, I think the answer is that there isn't a clear dominant aggregator that would be controlling the demand and the market. So I think there are a few reasons for that. If we think about just rentals from an operational perspective, they are a bit harder maybe to scale. So the supply side can be harder to secure. If you're trying to do a consumer-to-consumer marketplace and aggregating kind of the demand and then just facilitating consumer-to-consumer rentals, the hard part is the fact that what happens in between orders. There's inspection, there's the kind of refurbishing of items, and that can be quite burdensome. So that kind of hits the supply a bit. So I think in most marketplaces, it's actually like in consumer to consumer at least, there's maybe 2 to 5% of people that actually kind of actively supply the marketplace constantly, and then 90% or more just leach out of the supply of the active 5%. So I think that kind of more laborsome procedures that happen in between rentals is one reason for that. We've seen moves in some categories, like if we look into electronics and tech, Grover from Germany is a quite big player. They've raised a lot of venture capital. I'm not sure how they're doing right now. I haven't checked in a while, but that they were and are quite a large player in the kind of phone and laptop space that for leasing and renting equipment. But outside of that, I haven't seen that many actually global players operating in the space.
But is Grover like marketplace, or do they actually own the equipment that they are renting out?
I believe, I hope I get it right, I don't think there's like consumers in that marketplace, so they own some of the equipment, but I also believe that they act as a channel for professional supply. So they have also supply coming from brands that can list their equipment in Grover. Grover probably then facilitates a lot of the shipping and reverse logistics and the kind of refurbishment operations, but the supply is financed by brands. So I think from a brand's perspective, Grover might be a nice marketplace sales channel that does a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to the actual operational things and the kind of commercial setup. And then the brands then just finance the inventory. There have been others that we've seen previously, I think, that have now exited the market. If we go back 4 years or so, there was a marketplace in the UK at least called Fat Llama. They were, I think, running a kind of a C2C rental platform in UK. I think they struggled to turn that into profitability. They looked into securing more professional supply. So, for example, not only enabling consumers to rent their drones or audio and video equipment to each other, but actually going to professional supply and asking whether they would like to list their items in Fat Llama's marketplace. I think there they started kind of hitting the wall that many of the professional supply that is willing to engage in rental offering lacks actually like the tools to engage in a scalable way. So they might be running their operation on pen and paper or Excel or in a way that it's hard for them to do multi-channel sales when it comes to rentals, where they need to kind of understand when stuff is coming back and all of these things. So that's another friction point, which I believe has been kind of preventing many of the rental marketplaces to scale, that the professional supply that is often needed for the refurbishment side has lacked the tools to actually engage in the market in a modern and scalable way.
Grover was like B2C platform, or is still a B2C platform, and also Fat Llama kind of turned into that as they struggled with C2C. So what is the main challenge with C2C? You already mentioned that, like what happens between the rentals or refurbishment operations, but is there also other challenges there?
Yeah, I think the challenge might also be that rentals in general might have compared to the amount of supply, if you combine the amount of supply and the average order value of a booking, you start to operate from a marketplace perspective, you might operate in a quite challenging unit economics. So let's try to have an example that I have let's say the average order value of a booking in my marketplace is $60. Then I have let's say that I have a pretty high kind of a marketplace or transaction fee, let's say 20%. So that gives me $10 that I secure from that actual sale there. Now, with that 10%, with that $10 or euros, I needed to somehow make that transaction happen in the first place. So I needed to probably, as an aggregator, I needed to bring the demand to the marketplace. So many of these marketplaces, the first years, they kind of have to drive the demand with paid marketing. $10 for that it's already kind of quite limited that how much you can pay in customer acquisition. So unless you turn into an organic household name, it can be hard to kind of drive repeat sales there or repeat bookings to the platform. And then the core challenge being that the average order value is so much lower. Whereas if you compare it to, I don't know, Airbnb or similar, the average booking is probably a lot higher than $50.
There's probably also some kind of limitation in like the area that you are operating. So I think small items you might be able to ship, but if we're talking about lawn mowers or anything like that, you probably, like, the unit economics don't actually make sense if you want to start moving that to different cities. So it kind of
it has to be super local. So there are, like you said, there might be categories where the item can be shipped. Like if you were to do and this is probably the reason why some of these booking platforms are super niche or vertically specialized. So let's say I have a marketplace where people can rent board games and puzzles. Those are somewhat easy to ship, and maybe that user base is willing to go through the trouble of making sure that all of the pieces are there and whatnot between bookings. But then, like you said, lawnmowers, even drones or anything a bit more complicated, the challenge is then that I think it was one marketplace that said that they kind of found out that in order for that transaction to happen, if it's consumer to consumer, they needed to be like 0.6 miles apart, so like less than a kilometer. And if you think about the supply and demand and you start to kind of draw those circles, they start to be quite limited pockets and markets. Now, how this might be turned around is that then you kind of invite a lot more professional supply to the market, where you have more supply and they are probably running this kind of a booking operation already. So they're more willing to just like look into this channel as extra sales rather than the only channel, and that they're kind of already going through the hassle of renting stuff. That might be a solution, but then you kind of have to provide those merchants with appropriate tools that not only help them list in your marketplace, but probably means that they can run their business with that tool.
So it sounds like there might actually be already some kind of like C2C transactions happening, but they are probably not just visible in this type of traditional platforms like Airbnb or similar, but they might actually happen in Nextdoor or something that's very local and very tied to the community already. So there might actually be a lot of things happening, and there might not be some kind of reason or something to actually move into these nationwide or even international platforms similar to Airbnb, where you are kind of like traveling and you get the benefits of using the same platform in any city.
And also for this, I have no data, but I kind of it's more of a hunch that I feel that the more local you go, the more trust based it is, the more it's like a community helping other community members. So if I have a ladder and someone needs it for a day, it can feel socially awkward for me to say that, yeah, okay, if you pay me $20 for it, then you get it. Maybe I just say that I loan it to you, and then I just want to get some maybe trust, like social credibility or something, like seeing whether I can trust you with the ladder. If I would say that I have an extra ladder that I don't need at all, I'm willing to sell it, and then you'd say that you need a ladder and you want to buy it as used, it might be easier for me to say that, well, what if you pay $50 for it? So that's why I think there's this like a slight psychological difference. I think that happens in some product categories when is it a booking or is it a resale thing? So that's probably also in the space that the more local you go, the less you want to haggle for small amounts of booking income maybe. And then if you want to do that, I don't think whether you need an actual, like if you become like let's have neighbors loaning stuff to neighbors, do you really need a marketplace there? Or do you just need facilitation in payments? So Venmo or, I don't know, mobile pay in the Nordics or PayPal. So just like removing friction from the actual like money transferring.
Am I getting it right that you kind of, if we're referencing to the Ben Thompson's runs their strategery, it's a very, very difficult name, but he's running this awesome newsletter blog. He's been running it for 10 years, and I kind of came up with the aggregation theory, where he's explaining like why some of these companies are actually able to grow so big, and it's all about just capturing the demand. And when you have demand, then the supply comes there. So am I getting it right that you are maybe doubtful if there is going to be this type of C2C type of platform, or is it like because it's local in nature, there is small AOV, so it is most likely not going to happen in a way of C2C, but it might actually need, for example, businesses to provide the supply, and of course if they have higher volumes and logistics and all the operations in place, they are probably more able to kind of make it work in a scale.
Yeah, I could say that. Of course, there's probably product categories where it differs, but that's the reason why we wouldn't probably see a general rental marketplace, but then it would be super specific to a vertical where like power tools and that like do-it-yourself market. I think they're a kind of even a C2C thing might work. But in general, I would say that it's more realistic, in my opinion, to see that if there is this kind of a local marketplace, the supply would come from professional businesses, and then because for the demand side, if the supply comes from a professional business, it kind of also means less hassle for you. You can be a bit more certain that all right, the product is actually of good quality. You can trust the seller a bit more. You can trust that it's been maintained well. All of these things. So I think it's a bit easier than to operate in that, like because it's a service relationship at the end of the day. You probably get a better service from a business than you would from a consumer that is just trying to get an extra buck for something that they're not using. It might be that people, if they have like unused goods that they're not willing to resell, but they would be willing to kind of put out there to be rented, that they would use some kind of a facilitative business in between who then kind of actually runs the operation of storing it, renting it out, and then all of these things, like almost like you having a vacation home and then you have someone taking care of the rentals when you don't need it. So I think I could see that working, but in essence, that already would kind of be professionalized supply, who then just gets their supply from consumers rather than just connecting two sellers.
But do you see that there is the demand in general, that there is enough potential customers for running this type of business?
Yeah, I think, well, the demand would have to be split with per product category, but yeah, certainly like power tools, 100% like that market exists. Trailers, 100% that market exists. A lot of sporting equipment, I would say, that exists, at least kind of the more expensive side of things like bikes or skis, things that you use once or twice a year, so super like seasonal things, that market exists. Baby and maternity equipment, I think that's already kind of a market where you know that there's this kind of this built-in seasonality that if I rent something now, it's going to be too small in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, or whatever. So I think there are these markets, but whether these markets connect locally so that you would a kind of a normal consumer would be willing to go through the effort what is needed before and after a booking to earn extra, let's say $40 for lending a ladder to someone. I'm not sure whether that's a kind of a scale. It probably would lean towards like, hey, let's set up a service that makes it easier in our community to support each other. We might have a small kicker in terms of like some monetary compensation for the trouble, but whether it would be a marketplace business case in a way that could grow to the size of Amazon or Uber, probably not. And I think that's the reason why we haven't seen a national or global rental marketplace in most of the categories. I think the closest that we've seen is either electronics, where it's more of a subscription service than actually short-term rentals, or then like occasion wear. So those, like, we've maybe seen that people are willing to tap into other people's closets. But if I'm not completely wrong, even those often work so that like almost in like the ThreadUp way, where I send my stuff to a facilitative mid-partner rather than directly from consumer to consumer.
I think we are now in a place where we know that there is a demand, and there is a lot of rental businesses that are kind of like already catering there, and it's a challenge to come up with like a C2C, the local by nature, small AOVs, trust, and a lot of challenges there that are kind of preventing that to actually not maybe starting those companies, but actually making them scale and make them profitable in a long term for every participant. So is the solution maybe that there is these existing rental businesses and then try to gather those and kind of create an aggregator platform where you just have already existing companies and maybe some new side hustlers or new service providers who are maybe gathering the supply from consumers or anywhere, but kind of like have this one place, one platform where for a consumer it would be super easy to go there and it would be trustworthy, and there would be most likely businesses providing that service that they are already providing, but it's just a place to aggregate those.
Yeah, so reminding that, this now speaking only about rentals. In rentals, I think that's the kind of the summary could be that these existing rental companies exist for a reason. They already have some customer bases. I'm certain that in most cases, like 8 out of 10, they would benefit from getting a little bit more visibility for their offering and catalog. So if you kind of walk into the average rental business and you would do an audit on how discoverable your offering is, you can compare it to like the average, let's say, linear sales company. Some of them totally lack an online store or a booking platform, reasons being that they're not able to kind of connect it to their inventory management in a feasible way. For some, the actual booking experience is quite like paper driven and there's a bunch of contracts. There's just a lot of friction there that could be removed. And then they kind of sell, like almost like, hey, I sell to the neighborhood or the tourists that come to the area, but they don't actively list the stuff in a booking platform or similar. So yeah, I think there's an opportunity for someone to pool this supply that is already there, make their offering more discoverable, which is something that I think the marketplace examples that I mentioned that have tapped into that supply have kind of figured out that, all right, let's do that. Let's kind of position ourselves more as a B2C, like discover the rental or booking offerings locally here. Let's take probably a smaller transaction fee because we just essentially bring traffic rather than do anything else there. But then they kind of are then, I think, fighting with the challenge that how digitized these rental operators are. And that's probably like that's something at Twice which we believe that is our job, that as a white label kind of a ReCommerce OS, is to make sure that anyone using Twice is capable of listing their items easily to whatever marketplace there is. Because when you have someone coming to your door saying that would you like to have some extra visibility for new customers, of course your answer kind of is that yeah, sure, but then you need some platform that actually helps you do it.
And the challenge there probably relates to the, let's say, more complicated nature of rentals. So I think in Airbnb and a lot of these, let's say, like room or apartment booking platforms is that they at some point it becomes Airbnb's calendar that you are kind of using to manage the business, even if you get bookings outside of that Airbnb, but it's still quite simple. It's like I have one house and I have one calendar for that. But some rental businesses might have hundreds or thousands of items, and they also want to not just track the bookings, but also the inventory usage and a lot of this different data. Like what if I mark it unavailable in my inventory? That also has to kind of like travel all the way into these booking platforms that, hey, it's not available because it's broken or something like that, not only because it's booked by someone else.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of more complicated that are affecting the availability and making sure that there is no double bookings, because that's probably something that kills rental business if you are selling something that you are not able to provide constantly.
Yeah, so if I would kind of ask the question that if you would be an Airbnb host that has, let's say, 10 apartments, are you operating it fully on top of Airbnb, or are you already using a market solution for professional Airbnb hosts? I've seen these platforms that help you kind of manage multiple apartments. I think there is a threshold that after like 2 or 3 apartments that you rent out constantly, you will kind of go to the market and try to find a tool that helps you facilitate those listings.
That would be like HostAway or similar.
Exactly. So kind of it's and then if you think about these rental companies who are not renting out something that they can get $5,000 for a few days, but they're renting out something that they get $50 a day, and they have 2,000 of those items, or let's say even 100 bikes or whatever. Just purely having everything as a listable thing in a marketplace, compared to the revenue that they might get there, and then compared to the foot traffic that they actually get into the store, keeping things in sync is impossible without a tool like Twice, which would be the HostAway, probably kind of equivalent for the ReCommerce market. So, and then the frequency of bookings might be a lot quicker. So I think that's the core reasons why rental companies, they need modern OS systems that are commerce OSs that enable them to do this internally, serve their own customers, have an own online store channel, and then start adding these marketplaces as they come, or just kind of being able to easily do listings to kind of classify pages like Facebook Marketplace, your Nextdoor platform, or even Craigslist or similar.
And I think there is also this interesting how the market is kind of growing, or how it started originally. So I think Airbnb and Uber are examples where they kind of created this concept of like you are able to rent someone's apartment. So that's where it started. And then when you grow on that platform, then you probably look for that host away or similar solution that also provides you to have your own online store and your own brand where you're able to keep maybe a little bit more revenue. So that's kind of starting from these aggregators, and then you are growing into your own brand. But in rental space, it's like the current situation is that every rental business already kind of have their own small little world, and now the issue is kind of how to bring these together and under the same infrastructure, same platforms that enables the type of like connecting these.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out like if there are like professional Airbnb, let's say someone who sells in eBay or whatever and makes all of their, like a professional seller there. In rentals, in order to make money to sustain yourself, you kind of almost have to become a business. So there, you cannot probably operate solely from one aggregator channel's demand. So I wouldn't be able to say that, all right, here's the one rental marketplace, let me just become a seller there, and then this supply would be enough to sustain my business. The only thing where I can come up with that kind of paradigm might be something like I'm running my business in like a travel destination, and then I do partnerships with hotels or airlines so that when people book from booking.com or similar, I get visibility there, and then majority of my bookings would get from there. Or then like I think Bokun is a good example in that specific industry where you're able to kind of be visible in the OTA platform, so that if you're selling experiences for tourists, you get a lot of bookings via that travel agencies kind of already book your services. So that might be a big chunk of your offering, but you're losing also a lot of revenue to that. So I think you tend to see that once those local companies start to kind of get a household name in those travel destinations, they try to start turning those first-time visitors into a second-time visitor for the next season, that they would directly book from them rather than those intermediate platforms. And that then again starts to be a place where they need a system that can enable that direct booking from a returning customer or a walk-in customer while still being able to acquire new customers via these marketplace integrations. So in pretty much in all of these systems, you kind of need a system that enables you to do this multi-channel sales for walk-ins, your own online store channel, and then whatever booking or local marketplaces are relevant for you.
So it sounds there is maybe a small chicken and egg problem at the moment. So there's
a chicken and egg problem always with marketplaces.
Absolutely. But I think in this case, it's because it starts from already existing small businesses that are not connected in any way or not able to, with their current solutions, maybe tap into these existing or up and coming marketplaces or aggregators that are interested in starting these. So I think there are a lot of companies constantly trying to go here, but whenever they contact this business, it's like, sounds good, but how do I actually get everything listed there and so on. So I think the starting point is maybe a little bit different, that they have existing systems and they have to go away from those in order to even be visible on their marketplaces.
Definitely. That's something like, but I think that's something that at Twice, like we're not dependent on that kind of move, but what we hope that we enable for the market is that as we professionalize the software that rental companies use or any ReCommerce company for resales, we hope that supply then becomes more accessible for aggregators and other marketplaces, that when they need that professional supply from established businesses, they don't have to like build software for them. I think I've heard in the past 3 years or 4 years, I've heard at least 10 times a rental marketplace company saying that they started from a marketplace, and then either their investors or themselves they started to, via that experience, navigate to that they need to build the software for the supply. And then they find out that that's quite complex. And I think that's something we should have been a lot quicker with this. I think our new platform is finally doing it. But I think it's something that quite many end up finding out, that in order to tap into that supply, you first need to serve that market with a better platform solution, but it's a hard product to build. It's not easy. I think many companies tend to run out of cash when trying to do it. So that's kind of my thinking on the market dynamics there, and also the challenging part about rental marketplaces and aggregation is that it is a beautiful idea, and then you wanna kind of power that beautiful idea. That what if people have unused goods, but then the frictions are kind of riddled and hidden everywhere if it's consumer to consumer, and so it's maybe harder to grow fast with like venture capital money. Anyone looking to go to marketplaces in general, I think, needs to have a mindset that they're willing to bootstrap it quite a long time.
So maybe you can open a little bit, like how is Twice, and especially the new platform, how is it like built to support these type of new connections and integrations and enabling someone to maybe create these marketplaces or aggregator services that are kind of using the Twice platform?
Sure. I think it all starts with a few core concepts. It is, first of all, making sure that you've separated conceptually your catalog and your inventory. So a listing doesn't equal an SKU code. So that you can create listings that in your own online store or for kind of admin for your own employees or for marketplaces that connect to your inventory in a dynamic way. Because then every marketplace is a bit different, and in this specific marketplace you maybe want to market like, hey, here's just like standard skis, not necessarily forcing someone to select, I want atomic, this model, this height, and all of these things. So but then in some other marketplace you want to be able to do that in that granularity. So there, when you kind of dive deep into it, you need to separate these two concepts, and then that's made super easy in Twice, that you have a inventory where you can track every item individually. You can create listings that point to those in an extremely dynamic way, which frees you from two things. You can focus on your inventory as inventory, and you can focus on marketing and selling as its own thing. And these are not intertwined in a forcible way that you would consciously have to figure this out. So when you get to use that platform, you'll see that I can just spin out listings like in millions and millions. Even though I would have one bike in my inventory, I can do 1 million listings and list it out in so many ways, and then just see who gets the first sale in. Another, I think, key concept there is to make sure that as a platform, we're not looking to build something that would define how you run your operation. So we like often with vertical SaaS, I think companies tend to go deep with customers and then say that this is how you should run the business, and the SaaS solution is trying to kind of force you to some kind of operational model. And I don't think that works in ReCommerce, because it's like we've talked about in many of the previous podcasts, it's so like even inside a product category, the models of running your business and your preferences are so different that if you try to, as a vertical SaaS, force someone to operate in some way, you just, it's not going to cut it. So we are trying to make sure that everything that you have is just like, we're kind of the Airtable or Notion of your ReCommerce business, meaning that you can model your resources as you want, you can model your operational rules as you want. We enable that flexibility for you, rather than saying that, all right, here is a feature that says that this is the like switch that if you turn on, then 500 things happen and it becomes super complex. I hope that makes sense, but it's kind of this approach to making sure that your inventory and listings and orders are independent things, and you can take orders from marketplaces even though it wouldn't be connected to your inventories and listings. It's just decoupling a lot of things to allow merchants to connect the messy world of commerce that they want to kind of where they're active in.
Okay, so you need the flexibility from inventory and catalog, so you might want to do a lot of different listings. So on this bike enthusiast side, you want to say that I have exactly this bike, it has these brakes, it has this gearbox and all of that. but the same inventory item on another one of these marketplaces could be like professional bike or something like that. And that's like the first decoupling or like a rule that you are saying that there has to be. And then possibility to create different type of listings even on the same platforms and so on. And then probably also just about managing the availability. So like I mentioned already that it's not only the bookings, it's maybe scheduled maintenance time that some companies maybe want to do after every rental, some do like once a week or anything like that. If somebody says that or returns it that it's broken, you need to be able to say that this is no longer available, and that information has to go to all of these platforms.
Definitely. So yeah, that kind of it's a great synthesis. So that availability control then gets to the inventory side of things. So that when you have all of the items individualized, that everything is temporal, meaning that like for each one of those items you have an actual kind of timeline, meaning that you can book things there without worrying too much. It can be a booking that comes via listing, but you can go and schedule maintenances, and of course you can automate these via APIs, or maybe some things are built into the software. But the key thing is that whenever you're working with an like asset or resource, an individual inventory item, you need to be able to see its kind of timeline and just book stuff there and know that everything's in sync. So I think you're fighting a losing fight if you find out that you're forced to say that this asset base I'm assigning to that sales channel, this asset base I'm kind of making sure is for in-store, this asset base I'm making for that marketplace, rather than having a nice mid layer that helps you just say that, hey, if you have a new sales channel, great, I'll create these listings there in order to maximize my utilization of my inventory. But yeah, it's that temporality that you just touched upon on the inventory side. It needs to be independent. You shouldn't go to your catalog into a listing and say that, okay, now the availability has changed. It happens with the real assets, not the listings.
And that probably also means that all the data also kind of aggregates or is linked to that asset, so you know exactly how much this specific asset has been used, what is the most popular platform that the bookings coming, do the bookings actually differ when they are booked here or here, which might then kind of in a long term give you also this, what should I actually acquire to my inventory, and where should I actually sell, and kind of provide you all these learnings when it's linked to that specific unique article.
Definitely, yeah, 100%. And I think that after that you're in a kind of a future-proof way of doing a lot of things. But it's this idea of decoupling. I think that's the one thing that, like in standard linear commerce, listings and stock is coupled. It's usually even in the platform level, you might have a approach where you find out that, hey, what's the SKU code of this listing? Then you just put the SKU code there, and then under inventory management, the only question that you have is that how many of these you have of the SKU. But it's already kind of decoupled quite heavily with the listing idea, because the stock management is just a number that goes down per purchases, and then you can manually go and increase it, but they're like based on what you actually see on their shelves. But this temporality is like impossible to manage there.
And what about orders in this world, as probably a lot of the marketplaces or those kind of showcase the orders, but if you are selling in multiple marketplaces and you have a lot of different sales channels, you probably also need to have the orders control in one place. So the integration cannot be only that it's only my listings go to these platforms, but also the bookings have to come to one place where you're managing those, because that's the source where you are also saying that, hey, this item is now booked.
Yeah, kind of. I would say with slight like amendment in that is like when you share your listing. So when you kind of make your catalog or part of your catalog available for a sales channel, that listing always kind of knows, it has the capability of saying that, okay, I have these kind of availabilities, because it's kind of behind that, it knows the rules, what needs to be available in the inventory if I get purchased or booked. So then kind of if you share that listing, you're kind of already sharing the availability there. Now, that just controls whether someone can add it to a cart and check it out, so whether it can become an order. Now, for orders, it is then kind of the question that can you, in your own like order fulfillment flow, manage orders from multiple different channels? Because then that's usually where your day-to-day starts to break down. If some of your channels come to your email, some you do on paper, some come here, and then it almost like automatically means that your inventory and availability is not tracked, and you start to have double bookings, and you kind of start to say that I can't run these, and that's why I say no to potential new sales. But so if you have that kind of centralized order management that operates with the idea that your catalog has been shared, the double booking risk is a little bit lower. But I want to also mention that there are merchants, which I like, who are willing to, they're not worried about double bookings. They're worried about, do I get a booking? Like they're not operating at the utilization rate of 99%. So they'd rather have a order in and then figure out the fulfillment and the supply rather than already come to the market scared that I hope that nobody overbooks me. So for those players, how I kind of see it is that they need to be able to also create listings that is not connected to their inventory. They need to be able to have that freedom and say that, hey, yeah, for this marketplace, let's create these listings and I'm going to just like accept whatever comes in, but still see them in the similar context that they have in the order for other orders. So that again, I think is built around the idea that listings and inventory are decoupled. You can connect them, but you can also have listings that are not connected to those and just kind of have infinite availability because you're willing to sell infinitely. Maybe you know that you've defined the listing in a way that all of the orders come in a month in advance. So, and then you have the confidence that an order month in advance, I can always figure out the supply. But it's this decoupling of things that, again, that affect it quite a lot.
Interesting, very entrepreneurial take. I like that a lot. Maybe as like a concrete, like bringing it in, like if you are, let's say that you're a rental business and you are operating on twice and you are also connecting to these multiple sales channels. Is it defined that you are then managing these orders and customer communication, all of that in twice, or is there still this decoupling and the freedom of maybe this marketplace has like a nice chat feature or something like that where the actual order communication, all of that is handled, and is it still kind of like supported there? So do I still have one place where I can see all my orders and maybe not manage that order there, but maybe I can kind of like just click and I go to the right place to manage that order. So the assets, articles, inventory, all that is connected, like, but then there is still this decoupling or the freedom for the different platforms or aggregators to kind of control the aspect that they want to control and also maybe give the merchant or the business the possibility to kind of choose.
Yeah, definitely. So that kind of decoupling is built into our new platform. So in your, let's say, orders list, you can have orders that come from a third-party channel, and then as that comes in a format that you just kind of get an order, but it's not like that order's cart is not necessarily connected to via the rules to any of our inventories or catalogs. So you just have like a deep link to that platform's order. So you can have like, hey, here's an order. Then when you click it, the API that created that order also has the deep link of the kind of where you should be going when you want to manage this order. This is also true for many of the reasons that like many marketplaces or sales channels might have their own checkout. And then those checkouts might be kind of the payments and the refunds and all of these might be tied to that platform checkout and payment technologies that cannot be necessarily translated via APIs to some other order fulfillment system. So there it's just helpful to kind of see all of your orders, kind of seeing what's happening today, have an operational like situational awareness. But then if you have to issue a refund or manage the order, then you have that link to go to that platform. That's kind of our approach to make sure that the order fulfillment itself or the order management is independent. So you could use our order management without using our catalog and inventory or customers list, just to kind of, if you feel that that helps you to build that clearer picture of what's going on across different channels, which is something that we, again, consciously are trying to do, that all of these things from orders, inventory, catalog, customer management, sales channels management, all of these are independent blocks that you can take into use without taking anything else into use. If you use all of them, there's certain automation and power that you can enjoy in terms of availability management and maybe your own operational automation, but you can do those one by one. And that works the other way around also, that you can also start adding new channels one by one without having to kind of immediately integrate everything in an extreme depthness.
Sounds like there is the need and probably the want from the supply side to actually have these marketplaces aggregators. So basically more bookings, more sales. And it sounds like the new Twice platform is kind of designed from the ground up to actually support this. And how do you see that this is kind of like, how is this space looking, let's say, next year, when all of the infrastructure, all of that is available there? How is this market going to look, and what it's going to enable for maybe new marketplaces or existing ones?
Yeah, so from our perspective, what we feel is that this merchant base then operates on top of infrastructure who can be extremely aggressive and opportunistic in figuring out new sales channels. And that would mean that if you are an entrepreneur who enters this market via the demand, saying that I think there is a local demand for people wanting to rent trailers, they can build a marketplace with the knowledge that the trailer rental companies already run with the infrastructure, or there's a extremely affordable solution for them to bring their supply and kind of digitize their operation in a nice way. So we're just removing all of the friction from the marketplace builders. From the other direction also, if you have for example, a travel destination, quite often these areas are trying to, of course, locally help the businesses get more bookings, increase the local awareness of what the services are that are available, bring those in front of the travelers. So for those operators, which are often either owned by the local businesses, these kind of associations, it's a lot easier for them to also pool all of their services and demand to be discoverable and visible in an extremely frictionless way for the kind of travelers. So also from that point of on, like, businesses locally can unite in the sense of saying that let's try to grow the overall pie by making all of our services more discoverable for people that are visiting, for example. So from our perspective, the new infrastructure should enable people to have more discoverable offerings, be able to have higher utilization rates for their inventories without any of the hassle that has previously been attached to that. So they can operate in an opportunistic and entrepreneurial mindset, like you said, and actually kind of enjoy the benefits of having a more smoothly run business. So maybe that the best case would be that we start to, like, the first rental marketplace that becomes global or national in the US might say that, what made this possible was that the supply became accessible thanks to companies like Twice that did the digitization of these merchants.
So there is going to be the infrastructure that is going to make it easy for new marketplaces to come up and kind of, they have less problems that they have to solve, and they can actually focus on getting the demand there and getting the supply there, and then they can actually focus on connecting those two. And then the infrastructure, the platform, all the inventory catalog, order management, all of that is maybe outsourced to Twice or a similar company that is specialized in that.
Yeah, definitely. We wanna make that happen, or are already making that happen in many markets. Sounds
really good. So next year, or maybe even this year, expect to have a lot more rental marketplaces.
This year.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you very much, Tuomo. I think this was maybe a little bit different podcast than previous, but hopefully quite interesting. And of course, we are really interested to hear, did you like this more speculative and future-looking type of podcast? So thank you.
Thanks.